This is the voice of reason with Andy Hooser.
Yeah, welcome back into it. Great to have you here moving through your Friday, man. We're covering a lot of ground today. I want to talk about the economy. I want to talk about small business, and that's where I want to go to with our next guest on the program, the Director of Communications for the American Small Business League. Happy to have back on the show, Mr. Bruce Torres. Bruce, how are you, my friend?
I'm great, Andy. How are you today?
Doing great. It's always good to chat with you. I enjoy our conversations every time you're on here. And what a wild time right now. There's always been uncertainty. There's always been interesting times in the market and, startup businesses and new industries and small business coming up with new creative ideas. But we're really at an interesting turning point, aren't we? We have a major, massive generation that's working its way out into retirement. We have a smaller generation that's coming into the workforce. We have AI that's starting to replace stuff. I mean, where do we go from here?
On our knees and pray for wisdom and perspective and maturity and emotional self-control to handle it all. And we go to our website, ASBL.com, Andy, to learn a primary fact. Who are you? Identity is the beginning and end of all experience and existence. America is nothing but a small business nation. So we can explore all the kind of topics that you've already mentioned, but let's ring that bell and remember we are a small business nation, and everything that you just described, how does it help, hinder, or just ignore the small businesses of the United States of America? Things are not trending well, and that's the broad overview into which we can now examine anything we want.
I love that. I love the way you put that. I mean, we are just a small business experiment in the nation right now. Are we losing that edge, do you think? I mean, with the push for certain ideologies where we attack, the evil people with a lot of money and attack new innovative ways because it's all about the collective, are we losing that edge of the ability for a small business to actually start a small business, the red tape that kind of hinders us from actually being creative in the way that we need to for new innovation? Are we losing that competitive edge, do you think?
I don't think we're losing it, but it's squashed. It's got lots and lots of challenges. The 1/10 of 1% of businesses in America that are not small businesses rule the conversation for the most part. The media, much of what's online, much on social media, and for instance, every time we're told about how the market's doing or NASDAQ's doing or the trillions in dollars being invested by big companies into big companies from foreign, et cetera, you would think we are a big business nation. And that's the major problem is we don't understand that 99.9% of all businesses in America are small businesses with less than 500 employees.
Yeah.
That's even too big of a measure. 98% have less than 100 employees, and they employ almost half the workforce, the private sector workforce, huge part of GDP, and most importantly, small businesses create sometimes all the new jobs every year that America has ever created for the last 40 years has been created by small businesses. And the biggest problem is that complete inversion of reality, because if we really comprehended that, and looked at what the federal government does for those big businesses and how it stands on the neck of the small businesses and does almost nothing for us as small businesses, for all the lip service and ribbon cuttings and confetti and balloons and factory tours, it is, you want to pull your hair out because it's an egregious offense, and it's perpetrated by this administration and Democrat administrations and Republican administrations and Democrat administrations. They're all in the pocket of the big businesses. And ASBL.com, and there's, what are the remedies? Should we explore that, or what are your thoughts on what I just said?
Yeah, let's explore. Let's talk about some of these changes that we have, because you're right. I mean, the vast majority of business in America is small business. We are the driving economic force, and we have different political ideologies that like to squeeze the middle class with more taxes, and they go after the rich people and so on and so forth. But when you become successful and we see more economic drivers, that is what keeps this nation going and the GDP growth that we continue to see. So what needs to change in Washington, D.C.? What are those policies that we need to look at where when we give out government contracts or we look at investment in certain industries, that it's not going towards just the couple major corporations, but we're actually seeing economic drivers for the actual middle class and small business.
Thank you. Well, like we teach, the 1953 Small Business Act is the largest economic stimulus plan on the books. It created the Small Business Administration, and it demanded a few major things like access to capital, but also a fair portion of federal contract dollars had to go to small businesses. Over the last 70-some years, that has become the goal of 23% of what the federal government buys every year for goods and services should go to our small businesses. So if the federal spending every year for goods and services is around $800 billion, often you can find much bigger figures, but let's talk about $800 billion, okay? Around 23% would be around $200 billion is supposed to go to our small businesses. Those small businesses would create new jobs for that work because they're small. And every year, every SBA says, we met that goal, we passed that goal, nothing to look at there. Well, for 40 years, our founder of our organization, Lloyd Chapman, and for 20 years as the American Small Business League, we have found, and so have congressional investigations, that that's not true. That huge percentage is not going to small businesses, legitimate small businesses. It's really going to the 0.1% of businesses that are big businesses. They're already big. They don't create any new jobs. So when you learn about this at our site, ASBL.com, and then see how to contact your representative and 2 senators at govtrack.us. This is the thing to hammer them on, because it's not political, it's not ideology, it's not left, it's not right, it's not Republican, it's not Democratic. It's mainstream, wallet, in our communities, local communities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. We definitely need a bigger push on that, and I would love to see major policy reform going on in Washington, D.C. We're talking with Bruce Torres, American Small Business League. You can find them online at ASBL.com and find all the information. Let's talk about the upheaval of what we could potentially see with a shakeup in the industry moving forward. The baby boomer generation, more of them retiring out, one of the largest generations that we've seen, leaving a lot of vacancies in different industries, manufacturing for one, and now we're seeing at the same time the Trump administration investing in new business coming back in, new manufacturing, having things built in America, which hasn't been done in a long time. The younger generation, are they looking to do the same thing, or are those jobs going to go to the wayside through technology, robots, and AI? I mean, when we're actually producing and manufacturing here in the U.S., what does that future look like, do you think?
Well, I have to be optimistic just by nature and just to survive. And from what little contact I have with young people, there's a great strain of rebelliousness and can-do-itiveness and optimism. And also, yes, there is a resurgence of manufacturing that the mainstream doesn't herald. And to give President Trump his due, I always steer people to PrometheanAction.com. They interpret everything he says, everything his cabinet says, and every little move that he makes as being brilliant. I'm very, very on the fence because of the net impact or benefit of the Trump administration. Will we see such great results between now and the midterm? Because his poll numbers are bleak, and it's anyone's guess what's going to happen in the midterm. But there's a great case to be made that America is just not happy with the cost of living, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, well, that is very true. And right now, I think we are going to see in the midterm season, we've been talking about it. I think this election is going to boil down to the idea of capitalism versus socialism, of big government with redistribution, with people that feel like they're really upset with the way the system is compared to ones that want to go out and change it themselves and be the capitalists and do things on their own. I really think that this election is going to boil down to that type of division. And I really hope the right one prevails, because if not, we're going to see more of what we're seeing in New York City, taxes on people that we just don't like because they have more than us, and the jealousy and the envy is going to come out. And I think that's going to be really dangerous for society. Bruce, you mentioned a group right before the break. What are they saying right now?
The most powerful and inspiring and important thing they talk about is Alexander Hamilton's American system of economics. When those policies were implemented, Andy, that's when this country had the biggest phases of economic prosperity and growth and wonderfulness. And they describe how President Trump's policies are in line with this philosophy and the political economy of the American system of economics, which features protective tariffs to encourage local manufacturing, more easily available credit for productive enterprises so that we can develop our industries here at home and make and sell to each other so that foreign trade is almost incidental. We're not reliant on foreign trade. It's the total opposite of the screwing we've had for 50 years from globalization at the hands of the giant corporations and banking institutions that wanted to exploit cheap labor, extract the value of natural resources from poor countries, not give them the ability to technologically develop and develop their own internal markets with the American system of policies, et cetera, which is really just a current version of the British Empire. How the British Empire was screwing the colonies is free trade, is globalization. And they describe President Trump and his policies as a return to these very, very empowering ways and means of the American system of economics.
That's really interesting, and it makes a lot of sense for sure as well. You mentioned the globalization. I got to ask you, just based on your perspective, why did we, through the years, and we saw, beginning really at about the early 2000s, maybe a little bit before that, we saw this globalization push to where we outsourced everything, to where now we're almost 100% dependent on pharmaceuticals coming in from China. We have computer chips that we're completely dependent on coming from Asia being imported into the United States. And we're trying to fix that now. Thank goodness for the Trump administration. But how did we get to that point? And why did we give up so much power to just say, we're not going to make it. We're just going to do the cheap labor and just try and ship it in and think that everything's going to be okay? Why did we allow that to happen, or at least to go as far as we did?
Because in the late 1800s, a faction of the rich and influential in England put in motion their plan to infiltrate and recapture the United States of America as an arm of its global tyrannical agenda. And people should look at risingtidefoundation.net to dig into that deep history. Richard Grove's Grand Theft World that well describes this. This is the history that was well described in Carroll Quigley's book Tragedy and Hope in the 1960s that basically got him run out of his career as a professor of history at Georgetown University. It is a very, very important true history of the United States so that we can appreciate the McKinleys and the FDRs and the JFKs and now apparently Donald Trump, who were trying to reassert national sovereignty, who were trying to extract us from that involvement and from those endeavors for the sake of our national and personal, sovereignty and prosperity. I am not convinced that this is what President Trump is doing. But in all fairness, one has to look at how PrometheanAction.com interprets what he's doing and then think for yourself.
Sure. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Bruce, we're out of time, my friend. I love it. I could talk to you forever about this stuff. We appreciate you coming on the show very much, my friend. Let's do it again real soon. What do you say?
Love talking with you. Thank you.
Yeah, you betcha. Always a great conversation.